Welcome in, everybody. Here's another episode for you guys. Thrift Chronicles. I'm one of your guests, your host. We be thrifting, and I'm here with my other co-host.
Games by Omar. What to do,
So,
everybody?
guys, for this episode, we're going to be talking about resourcing. The number one thing that everybody needs to know is about resourcing. Me and Omar want to explain to you guys about that, how we go about doing it, how you should go about doing it. But yeah, Omar, how do you about resourcing?
So I have a multi faceted approach, man. When I go source, I've realized that once you start doing this long enough, you realize that what works today may not work tomorrow. And so what I do, I use either Facebook Marketplace. Sometimes even though I sell primarily online, I actually use online services like eBay sometimes to get bundles. And, whether it's thrift stores, whether it's garage sales, I try to do a little bit of everything because you never know when something is going to pop up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Facebook Marketplace. I know you put that on game with me about doing that. I never really went on there resourcing, but now it's been helping me out resourcing on there, finding really, really good deals, meeting people to get certain stuff. I know OfferUp. I know you probably use OfferUp too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. OfferUp and Facebook Marketplace are usually really good resources for like bundles. I'm primarily obviously video games. So, the biggest thing for me, I try to buy bundles there, people that are offloading, a couple consoles and, stacks of games so that I could get that for a set price and then go ahead and break it down and sell those things individually after, if I want to keep anything for myself, stuff like that. So, OfferUp is really good, as well as Facebook Marketplace.
Okay. Um, yeah, I know. I don't know if you really are familiar with doing like pallets. I don't know if you've ever found any like liquidation pallets with video games or whatnot. Because I know for me, for thrifting or pretty much just reselling period, I always try to find deals with return pallets or pallets just period, like when I do DVDs and stuff like that and VHSs. I find wholesale pallets are really cheap for inventory because then I'm able to flip that really, really well and make decent amount of money. But as for you, have you ever been able to find anything like that for you for video games?
So, I've never actually entered the pallet game. The thing is, I know for me, most times pallets, although they might have video games in them, they have a bunch of other things in them as well. Maybe if I do find something, we can probably, go in there together because you'll probably do well with everything else, and then I could just do the games because the thing is with pallets like storage stuff like that, my issue is I only sell one thing. So,
Hmm.
I try not to bring in too much of the other stuff, but if I have somebody that I'm gonna, go in there like, hey, I only want A, B, and C, but if you want the rest, then we can kind of go half and buy a pallet, then that I think would work for me. But I think pallets essentially are a little bit better for like your business model because you sell, pretty much everything. And pallets, especially like the Amazon Target return stuff like that, they come with a little bit of everything, so that that works out for certain business models a little better than mine.
Okay, well, yeah, I agree with that too because, like you said, I do different stuff. But have seen people sell like on Marketplace pallets for fully loaded with video games, but like not necessarily they're not newer games because I know for you you sell a lot older and kind of newer. But I know a lot of people look for like the rare or stuff like that. But obviously, I know some of these pallets that people do sell with the video games. I know it's kind of miscellaneous video games because some of them might be broken, some might not even be in there. They might be empty cases or whatnot. And then also too, it depends what for you if you were to buy a pallet or anyone that's resourcing to find a pallet for video games. It all depends on much the seller's selling the pallet for, and then you got to calculate exactly the amount of games you have in there and what kind of profit margin you would be making. Correct?
Absolutely. And this goes with, buying anywhere. You always want to make sure that, there's enough for you to make profit, not only just profit, but after your time, which is obviously going there, spending the gas to get there, coming back, testing if you got to test something, cleaning if you got to clean something. You make sure that when you're buying these things, wherever you're getting them, from the pallets, from the thrift store, make sure you're going to be able to sell that so that you're not losing money even after the sale. So that's big, man. I definitely have to calculate, especially when I'm buying bigger quantities. I like to calculate, but usually when you buy bigger quantities, it's usually cheaper per item.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I try whenever I can to buy, you know, larger amounts so that the per item is cheaper, because once again, my business model is, although I do sell bundles here and there, for the most part, I individually sell everything. So, it's just buy the bundle, break it down, and then piece it out, and then just get it out slowly that way. So yeah, always, for new resellers getting in the game, no matter what you're selling, to be honest, just make sure that what you factor in, your time, you factor in gas, you factor in, the cleaning, the testing, everything that you have to do, so that you're actually making money after you sell. For me, I'm not gonna buy anything for $5 to sell it for $6. Like I won't do that. To me, especially like in my field, I get the games. If the discs are scratched, I have a resurfacing machine. I'm going at resurfacing them. I'm putting the games in the system. I'm testing the games. Making sure everything is good. A lot of that is time. And I spend a lot of time on that. So for me, I need to either get the games cheap enough or sell them high enough so that I can actually justify, the time that I'm spending.
Yeah, because time is money. We all know that.
Absolutely, bro. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean,
you
there's
know.
go ahead, bro.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say there's so many, there's so many ways you can go about this. The thing is, I've learned, especially like for you, everything is out there. Me and you could go to a yard sale, and I can't tell you anything about anything other than video games. But you could see the value in like a VHS, you could see the value in a shirt, you can see the value in, all of these other things. And that stuff is always out there. People are always selling things. I always say the best time to buy is around the first of the month, because people need rent money, people need money for bills come around. So if they're going to be offloading things, that's a good time to source, around the first of the month, because people might be willing to cut you a deal on Facebook Marketplace. They're like, hey man, I need to get rid of all of this product, I need $300 by today, and that
Yeah,
could
yeah,
easily
yeah.
be, $900 worth of product right there, if you're willing to, put the time into it, sell it, list it, get it out there. And that stuff works. Thrift stores, I'll be honest, man, I haven't really been to the thrift as much as I used to. The thrift stores near me, for video games at least, have been crazy expensive. They sell games more than I sell them for sometimes. Like I haven't really been there as much, and I always say I should stick my head in there, because every once in a while you can catch them slipping. Now, you know there a lot of these places, there's things like this that we're doing right now, and there's a lot of YouTubers out there that are putting people on the game. So the thrift stores know the game too, man. So I don't want to say the days of finding stuff, and my opinion is based solely on games, of course, but I don't want to say that the days of finding things at the thrift are like just done, but it's definitely a lot harder now. The competition's out there. A lot of people are doing this. A lot of people are doing their research. The thrift stores are doing their research. So it's a little harder to find stuff consistently there. So I've kind of stepped a little bit back from thrift stores in general when I'm sourcing.
Yeah, no, you're definitely true about the thrift stores are doing their research. A lot of people are doing their resourcing and stuff like that. It is very competitive for what we do. We're just on here giving our opinions and what we see, our insights. But like you said, with the thrift stores, I don't go as much either, and I know sometimes, it is a hit or miss. You just have to go on the right day, and sometimes you don't even know those are the right days too. Because I feel like sometimes when you do go for certain items you're particularly looking for, they might not have them out, or they might have a particular item that you are looking for, like let's just say a sports team or something that might be overpriced rather than another one that, let's just say it's a non-sports team T-shirt that's probably further low, but then that one probably has more of a value at the thrift store. Also, like
Yeah.
for the video games, for you, since I've been going to thrift stores, I know certain thrift stores they do sell video games a lot more. But then when you do find video games that that are higher value, sometimes you open is the case of the video game is sometimes the games are not even in there, or the games are like really, really, really badly scratched, and then they sell them for like a high value. Like we said, they sell them more than you. They might as well just go to Games by Omar than buy the games.
Absolutely. At least if you get it from me, you'll know it's working. But you know, you made a very very good point, man. And when you're sourcing, a lot of people, it's easy to see the dollar signs first. And I've learned that you really got to inspect the item, man. I can't tell you how many times, I've kind of just bought on impulse. I'm like, oh yeah, I can get this or this for that. Scoop it up really quick, and then I get it home, and then I realize, oh man, there's like a chip right here, there's a crack right here, and on a video game disc, that's the difference between it working and it not working most times. Scratches, can be dealt with. Like I said, I have a machine to do that. So, I can fix that for the most part. But, always inspect the item. Don't just think dollars first. Because the thing is, sometimes, let's just use the thrift store. People are donating this stuff um, because they have no use for it. And sometimes people donate stuff because it doesn't work. So, just know that going in, that, when you go find these items, or you go, just make sure you look them over, and then look them over again before you pay that money. Because something that, you thought was going to be, a $50 profit could easily turn into a $10 loss.
Yeah, no, you're right. And that's how I feel with buying return pallets. Like, you're investing the amount of money for getting the pallet for so cheap, but sometimes you're not able to check or test the items until you buy the pallet. And I do agree with you. Like, when you buy something like that, especially if you pay a big amount of money to buy something like that for your resourcing benefit, you don't know if a majority of that stuff's going to work. Because sometimes if it is a return item, like you said, or even if they donate it, like how you said, the thrift store, you don't know if it's going to work, or they might just turn it in because it doesn't work. And same thing as it goes for people who return items for like Home Depot or whatnot. They'll they might have these tools or whatever it may be. They might just return it because it didn't work, or it might be missing something, or a wire might be cut, or it might work. But that's why you, as a reseller, anybody that's out there getting in the game, they just need to test everything, inspect everything, like you're saying. Not always think about the dollar sign. And then also too, like how you're saying, like you can look at the dollar sign and be like, okay, I get this, it looks great. Let me go ahead and post it. But then it's like later on, without not like really, really going in deep diving and inspecting the item, you might find out when you sell, you might have a rip, or it might have a crack, or it might be like, let's say the shirt might be bleached or whatever. Then you're like, oh man, I didn't do my due diligence. So now you're either going to have to refund that person or take it off. Or also, if you get something thinking that you're going to make a certain amount of dollar sign, it might sit for so long, and then you might have to even sell it for even less.
Yeah, that's true, and that's where it goes back in, into the time, factoring in when you're sourcing these items, man, because you really got to take the time to make sure that you're not buying something that realistically you may not be able to sell, or you sell and have some type of problems. On my side with the video games, man, I spend hours per day going through these games, man. I test them. I don't care what it is. It could be Just Dance, it could be Major League Baseball, My Little Pony. Like, I at least play a little bit of it every day, before I post it up, because I don't want to sell that to a person. And then, maybe a week later, 10 days later, I get hit up with a return request or anything like that, or a refund, because the item isn't working. So, always check, this stuff out before you buy. But there's so much, man. There's so much you can do to source. One thing I do want to talk about that some people will maybe agree or disagree, but one of my best sources for inventory is my competitors. And that sounds crazy, but you know, in the video game market, video game reselling market, there's a lot of, everybody and their mama do this, man. Everybody does. And you come across people that do sell the exact same things you sell, do the exact same things you do. Instead of, being negative towards those people, I work with them. Because there's times where they may have something that I need, or I have something that they need, vice versa, or whatever. And I've actually purchased big lots, like at conventions. I'll go to the conventions. Some of these guys, they brought all that stuff, and they're like, man, I don't want to take this stuff home with me. I was trying to sell most of it. I didn't sell as much. I'm like, all right, man, work me a deal. Maybe a couple dollars a game. I'll take all of it off your hands. And then boom, I'm leaving with a bunch of inventory. He got cashed out. Always work with those around you. Your competitors can be a great source of inventory for you. But you just got to be friendly with them. We're all doing the same thing. Of course, one person winning doesn't have to mean the other person losing.
Yeah, and it's good to network with your competitors because, like you said, they might have something that you need, you might have something that they need, and then like two of you guys can work out an agreement on a buyout on for each other. Why not? Because then at the end of the day, they can be out resourcing. They might not find something for them, but they might be like, "Hey, Omar, like, by the way, I'm over here at this game shop. They didn't have anything for me, but I know you collect these commons. They're selling them at this and that dollar amount. I can get them for you, and you just pay me. You know what I mean? Like, it's good that everybody can get along in the same type of field that we all do as a reseller. I feel like the same thing with me thrifting and doing all the other stuff with the clothes and all that. And like for me, my main resource lately, what I've been finding for me to find good stuff is, to be honest, is Instagram. Besides Marketplace, but on Instagram, I find a lot of good stuff for me for thrifting, as in like clothes, what is it, events, but mainly like clothes and all this other stuff that I find that is kind of like, I'm not gonna say dirt cheap, but it's reasonable. That's not really hurting my pockets, where I'm able to like spend pretty decent amount and then still make more than what I paid for.
Absolutely, man. And when you say Instagram, like, are people posting bundles? Like, how do you go about, hitting them up to get that inventory?
So what I notice is on Instagram, like for you, so yours is particularly games, your page. So mine is particularly thrifting, as in clothes, or just pretty much anything to do with reselling. Like I'll follow gamers and all that. So what happens is, like, I noticed for Instagram is whatever you choose to follow or whatever you describe yourself as on the page, it's gonna give you those Instagram pages to reach the criteria that you're interested in. So like since I do the thrifting, it gives me like a lot of thrift stores in like in the IE or in LA County. It'll give me other resellers that have their own thrift shops or places where I can get. A matter of fact, there's a place that I go to in South Central that I found on IG where I can get a mixed bale of clothing, 1,000 pound of bale of clothing for a really, really good price. $50, like you can't really beat that. Um,
Absolutely.
Two, it's like if I sell maybe two or three items on there, I'm gonna make my $50 back. I'm not really, I'm not hurting the bank. And then two, it's like it's mixed with vintage Y2K and probably newer stuff. But like for me, that's how I found them. I found them on Instagram. I found a lot of other game stores that sell games. I'm not necessarily do games like you, but I try to get some games when I can. And I know sometimes when I do get my games, I always take pictures and stuff that I got to do and send it to you to get some type of um, explanation if it's a good game or whatnot. But yeah, Instagram, that's how I usually do it. And then Marketplace. Also, I go to whatever thrift stores that I can. I also go to these spots. They're like Amazon return bin places. I know you told me they're starting to build one where you're at, but these ones are like different days or different prices. So I always go on different particular days. Like usually I try to go on Wednesdays and Tuesdays. Tuesdays are $2. Wednesdays are $1. And I try to particularly go Wednesdays because $1 you can't, I can go on there and get 20 items. That's $1 each. That's $20. And then I can go ahead and flip all that and I'll make my $20. Probably, like I said, maybe two or three items. I try to be reasonable, not to try to break the bank. And sometimes I don't really do my research, but just by knowing for me buying something or looking at it or if I sold it before, I know the type of value that it has because I've already resourced it.
Absolutely, man. And that ties into, buying. Sometimes it's easy to buy things that you're familiar with. You know, for me, like video game wise, I'm gonna buy anything Super Mario if it's cheap enough because I know that I've sold Super Mario countless amount of times. I can't even tell you exactly how many times I've sold like Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo or Mario 64. That's like an easy sell, or like Pokemon and stuff like that. Build familiarity is definitely a good thing. If you sold it once, you could definitely sell it again. But one thing I've learned as well, if it's something you've never seen before, always check it because you never know, man. Um, there's things like, all right, I have a quick story. This was last year. I'm trying to remember. I would say about a year ago. I went to source at there's a strip of just people just selling stuff. Like it's on the street, and everybody has their canopy, and they just have their clothes, they have their whatever. It's not really a swap meet because it's just on a random street, but it's just out in the open. And I used to hit them up every Saturday and sometimes Sunday. One Saturday I went there. There was a dude who was there, and he always has like game stuff for me. And he had a lot of the same things. Xbox 360 consoles, PS3. Some games. Not nothing too crazy, but when I went there, I saw one of the consoles said property of Activision on it, and it was just a regular Xbox 360 console. That to me piqued my interest, and I just bought it. I bought it for $30. Bought it, bought some other stuff from them, and then went on my way. Took it home, plugged it in because once again, I go through everything, test it, and I realized when I turned it on that the menu screen and everything was different. So, I did a little research, and I found out that, that's a dev kit, or development kit. So basically, what I bought was, before a game comes out or, a console comes out, they make these kits to test the games to, make sure that there's no bugs, or whatever adjustments they need to make before the game comes out. So I bought that for $30, tested it within a week. I sold it, I think, for $675 on eBay.
Wow.
And all of that was just because, I was walking around, I saw something that just looked a little different than what I usually buy, and it piqued my interest. If it didn't have the sticker on it, I would have walked right past that, to be honest, because I have tons of Xbox 360 stuff. I don't, a lot of times I don't buy the systems just because, it's so common, and, they don't necessarily move as quickly. so I don't buy it. But that particular one, just looked a little bit different. And, I could have looked it up on the spot, and then, maybe that would have piqued his interest. He would have probably like, raised the price, who knows. But I just bought it on a whim, took it home, and then, made some very, very nice profit. So it just takes the little things. I would assume with you, you see like antique stuff that just looks a little different. I mean, that you never know. There's so many things out here, and what people don't understand is, people are, there's a buyer for everything. So, once you buy something, you go out there and you source it, and it's something peculiar, something, rare. It may not mean anything to you when you pick it up, but that could mean something to somebody, and some people are willing to pay up for these things. So, always pay attention is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, 100. You need to pay attention. You need to do your due diligence as doing your research like you did, and see as a reseller, you doing video games and me doing clothes and whatever. It's good that we have that eye to catch on certain things. Like you said, if you probably would have popped up the phone, he probably would have been like, hold up. Okay, I can't. He's doing the research, so he probably knows that it's worth more. Let me go ahead because they could have put a different price, or could have even took it in the back and probably put it online. Because nowadays, like pawn shops and thrift stores and all that, if they find something high in value, they just take it off the shelf and they just put it online to bid like anybody else because they know that they're going to get the amount of money for it.
Absolutely, bro. That's why I didn't even mention pawn shops. When I was when we were talking about where do you source, man? Because at least here in California, Southern California, all the pawn shops are already online. So
Well, yeah, no,
just like
they're definitely online. But like I said, most pawn shops they don't really know most value of certain items because they're kind of looking for like the big expensive items. Like gone to pawn shops and I've gotten some really good deals on certain things, and I've heard people too where they like. Matter of fact, like I have this story. I think I told you before. This one lady, I think she had a guitar or something. I don't know what it was, but she went in to get money for the guitar, and the guy was like, "How much do you want for the guitar?" And she was like, "Oh, it's 200 on eBay." And like how me and you always stated, okay, is it 200 as in sold or is it 200 just listed? Because listing and sold are two different things. And that's what he was trying to explain to her. And she was like, no,
absolutely,
it's 200. And he was like, no, let me hold it up and show you. And then when he told her the actual price and he was like, look, I could give you $60 for it. And then she's just like, oh, no, it's not worth $60. He's like, no, it is. That's what it's saying. It's stated right here. And that's what people need to understand. Like, you need to do your research. You need to do your resourcing to figure out exactly what you're getting and if it's worth the amount of dollars to pay for it and going to get the money back. Because again, these thrift stores and these pawn shops and all these other places, they're doing their due diligence by doing the same thing as we're doing because they're resellers too. So they want to make sure they're getting their top dollar, and just as much as we're trying to make our money and get our top dollar for the item also too.
absolutely. Yeah, it's I watch videos, and I see, a lot of guys, they do find deals at the pawn shops. I just haven't had this, that type of luck. It's one of those your mileage may vary type situation. Some people, might find great stuff at the thrift, or some people might find better stuff at yard sale. It just kind of depends. It's the luck of the draw. I haven't been, I'll be completely honest, I haven't been to a pawn shop to buy games in a very, very, very long time, man.
Well,
Like it,
I'm telling you right now, Omar, I don't think you plan on going to a pawn shop because I just went to a pawn shop not too maybe like 4 months ago. I only went to go get DVDs because they were selling the DVDs for $1 and comic books, so I ended up getting those. Um, and I think I bought a Shaquille O'Neal Lakers championship bobblehead. He gave it to me for really cheap for like $5. and then I ended up flipping that to my coworker for like 30. But when I looked at the games, I was like, whoa, yeah, I'm not buying games here. I'm sorry. So
Oh
I doubt you're gonna go there anytime because I'm telling you, they're probably maybe 5 times more than what you would sell them, and probably maybe a little bit more, or probably equal to maybe eBay and all the other people that kind of sell the games at shows.
man, yeah, that's the thing, man. It's always do your research, guys. That's the main thing. You put a good point, and I know we're kind of spreading the topic around, but when you're sourcing things, don't look directly at what someone is selling something for. You gotta look and see what it's sold for. That's the main thing when you're sourcing, because I can take a potato chip that's shaped like Abraham Lincoln or something, put it on eBay for like 15,000 bucks. That doesn't mean somebody's gonna buy it for 15,000 bucks. It's a potato chip, right? You
Yeah.
know, with video games, you gotta look and see what people are actually selling these things for, so you can kind of base your value, because everything has a value. Everything has
Yes.
value. So, you need to look and see exactly what you can sell it for before you pay, because the thing is, you don't want to pay for something and then it sells for less than what you paid for. We're obviously, we do this for the love of the game, but we need to make money as well. So, my goal is to not just sell stuff for a loss all the time. And there will be losses. There's gonna be losses in this business. That's just how it goes. But I try not to do that consistently. Um, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's like, that's not what we're here for. But when you source, it's always good to check, and find out exactly what you can get. And one thing, I think should be mentioned too, when you're sourcing and you're checking these values, you want to check on the frequency in which these things are selling. um because if it's something where you have to put up a lot of money up front and the sell through rate isn't that high, you know, although you can get that profit or get that money back, you might have to sit on it for a while. And everybody's financial decision, I mean, financial situation is a little different. So, you always want to be mindful of just making sure okay, I might have to put this money into this item. It may take me 3 months, because not everything is a quick flip, man. You know, there's things that I've sold within 10 minutes of posting it. There's things that I've probably had since last year, 18 months, maybe even 2 years. It just depends on when you're buying it. When you're out here sourcing this, knowing, or at least having a general idea of how quick this can actually sell. Like, what is the demand for this item?
No, yeah, you're right. You have to do your research and your resourcing, like you said, because you don't want something to sit for a long time, unless you don't mind doing that. But then it's like when it does sit for a long time, and like you said, if there's not a lot of stuff listed on eBay or Mercari or whatever platform any reseller uses, then eventually what's going to happen, and you're going to end up getting a low ball price from somebody, or you're just going to have to sell it for really, really dirt cheap because you just want to get rid of the inventory and then try to bring in new inventory when you go out resourcing.
Absolutely. It's just one of those things, and that, for me, I have items where I know, like, if it's a higher price item, or a higher selling item, I should say, like, I know I might sit on it for a while. A lot of people may not have, you know, $400 to just toss at one console or one game, at a time, but when I buy that for, let's just say $50, $60, I'm going in knowing that, okay, this $60 that I put into this right now, um, may be tied up for a while, or the profit, or whatever that I'll get back may be tied up for a while, just for the fact that, this is a pricier item, and it may not sell. Or sometimes, I buy bundles of games, and I'll look at, okay, I bought this whole stack of games from this guy, and I know A, B, C, and D are gonna sell really quick. Everything else might sit. But for me, if I already made the profit off of A, B, C, and D, then I don't mind the other stuff sitting, because at the end of the day, the money that I've already invested, I've already gotten that back. So any other sale after that is just a bonus at this point. And a lot of things tie into that, obviously space and stuff like that. Everybody's situation is different, but that's kind of how I do when I source, because I know that, okay, I'll make my money back off of these 5 items out of these 20 items, and those 5 get me my money back plus profit. Then when the other 15 slowly trickle in, those sales slowly trickle in, that's a bonus every single time. So that's kind of how I approach sourcing when I'm buying things, because I do want quicker sales. Everybody should want quicker sales, but there's things that you're gonna sit on, and it just depends on your financial situation, and everybody's business model is different. So some people don't want to sit on anything, but that's just one thing you kind of have to factor in when you're buying this stuff is, how long is it going to sit?
Yeah, and that's part of the game as a reseller, just selling everything, just while you're doing your resourcing. Like you said, stuff's going to sit regardless. It all depends on the amount of time that it sits, and it also depends on the amount of time you're doing as you're resourcing, finding the right item that's going to sell really quick. So then because sometimes you don't want to buy the stuff that doesn't sell really quick, and there's not very many listings of that item or product or whatever it may be, because then you're losing money. So as for anyone that's coming in as a reseller, guys, as a new reseller, like how me and Omar discussing, you guys should either go through Facebook Marketplace, OfferUp. If you guys do go to OfferUp, I know I've done where I go to free listings, and some people, like you said, don't have a budget. So sometimes there's people that want to get rid of stuff. Sometimes they don't want to give it away to thrift stores or stuff like that. So they tend to give it away on OfferUp for free. I usually jump on those type of stuff if I don't have enough inventory or if I'm tight on money. I'll go ahead and go into that thing and just take the stuff off the people's hands. Sometimes you're able to do the resourcing through the pictures. I usually do that. That's just me. I don't know if you do that, Omar. I don't know if you get anything free from anybody, but I usually do that. So then I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go scoop that up. Um, Also, people could check thrift stores, and then, like I said, Instagram, and then to do resourcing. But everybody needs to do their own resourcing, however they want to do it. But there's a lot of platforms out there that you're able to find resourcing, or like how you said, Omar, yard sales, and then estate sales too. People can also do that. They're coming in and reselling. And then the number one, besides all that, is what you have in your house. Instead of you giving it away, check what you have in your house, check the value, and just do your own resource at home. Or hit up your buddy. Like I can hit you
Yeah,
up,
it's
Omar, and be
it's
like, hey,
true.
Omar, you got some clothes you don't wear? And I'll do my own resource, my research.
No, I hear you, man. I mean, there's so many different ways that this can be done, and I haven't really found, because the thing is, video games one of those things where a lot of people just not giving them away. So occasionally I probably maybe had a few in this. I don't even know how long I've been doing this at this point, but for the most part, I do have to pay for almost everything. But one thing definitely, I don't even want to call it competitors, but find alternative sources. I have another quick story, man. There's a store, and it's a it's an electronic store. We'll just say that, and they sell video games there. Um, and the money is not necessarily made off of the video games, but they do sell video games. So I met up with the owner. Actually, we bump into each other a lot at like the video game conventions, because I sell at these conventions. And he had his bargain bin, and his bargain bin was like $1 a game. And these are not necessarily expensive games. You know, most of them $8, $9, $10 games. Maybe a couple of them go up to 15. And he had them for $1. First day of the convention, I went in there and I bought all the ones that I thought that I needed or I wanted. And second day of the convention, did it again. So after we talked, we set up a deal essentially. He gets stuff traded into him all the time. And it's usually a lot of the low value low value games. And he doesn't have the shelf space to stock all of those games, especially multiple copies of the same thing. Halo, Assassin's Creed. I mean, we're talking like Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 3, stuff like that. So he doesn't want to deal with those. And I'm like, well, listen, you don't want to deal with that. I will gladly go take those off of your hands for $1 a piece, like how we did at the conventions, because I sell that stuff 8, 9, $10 all the time. And just because he doesn't have the space or doesn't want to deal with it, that gives me an avenue to go in there and buy at a cheaper price so then I can go ahead and resell them. And a lot of these games are in really good condition. Even though I have a machine to fix a lot of them don't even need to be fixed. But, everybody's business model, his business model is not my business model. So, the cheaper games, he doesn't even want to deal with that. So it's like, okay, I can come in. So that's a source for me all the time to get stuff fairly cheap just for the fact that he doesn't want to deal with it. So as a new reseller, always check all avenues. It's of course we're gonna say, go to the thrift, go to the yard sales, go to this, go to that. But sometimes you gotta find stuff that's outside of the box. Network, talk to people, let people know exactly what you're looking for. You would be surprised how many people, I'm like, hey man, I'm always looking for video games. And now I get texts all the time. Hey man, you want this? Hey man, you want that? Sometimes I'm like, man, I don't even got enough money to buy all that. But it's always put it out there, to the people around you, because they can be your eyes, they can be your source. You know, they can be the ones sourcing, and they don't even know that they're sourcing for you, but they might see something, on their everyday travels, or whatever they're going, or see something at a family member's house that's sitting around, and they just send that to you, and then boom, that's your moneymaker right there. So, it's always think outside the box, and you'll be surprised what you can get.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with you with that. Always think outside the box. Uh, like you said, network with people. That's very important. That's key in anything in life with reselling or just period. Just something that a lot of people don't do nowadays. Don't network. That's how you're never gonna find anything out there or whatnot. But other than that, guys, as a reseller, like how me and Omar explained, do your due diligence on resourcing as a reseller, as in any platform, offer up, Facebook Marketplace to find great deals, bundles, like Omar was saying. Instagram, like I was saying, you could find stuff on there. Just type in anything to do with thrift stores, rag houses, maybe for pallets for VHSs or anything for returns. Also, check these Amazon return places, these stores that they have these deals, or most of them are called like digging deals or whatever these weird names they be calling them, but most of the time they ain't giving you no deals, just to let you guys know. But other than that, for anyone that was listening, we appreciate you. I know we did go off the topic a couple times, but we just want to enlighten you guys what we're talking about. This is from our point of view, what we go through and what we do. So thank you for listening to us, guys. I'm We Be Thrifting and my other co-host,
Games by Omar.
and Thrift Chronicles. We were out. So see you on the next episode, guys.
Catch you later, guys.